Okay, so let's move from that. So you accounted for a fair bit of the spending. A lot of it has disappeared into the pockets of corrupt politicians. You see exactly the same thing, for example, with the Palestinian leadership. All of those people end up with billions of dollars in their accounts. And so that's appalling beyond comprehension. They sacrifice their own people and they often live elsewhere. And so the socialist redistribution of wealth ends up meaning that everyone's much more poor than they used to be, except the small minority of people who have power instead of the evil capitalists, and they have untold wealth at their fingertips. And then you also said the money was distributed around South America and Central America to destabilize and to promote revolution and maybe elsewhere in the world as well. Okay, so and that you can spend an awful lot of money doing that and cause an awful lot of trouble. And you also pointed out that that's been aided and abetted by the, what would you call them, useful idiots of the Western media. And so we'll get back to that. Let's turn to another element of the corruption, and that's you described Maduro as a narco, and the Maduro regime as a narco dictatorship. So talk to everyone, if you would, a little bit about the role of the cartels in Central and South America, because that's not something that's well understood in North America at all.
Well, by the way, people who think I'm making these things up, they can Google it. It's all online. This is, you can see in very serious media. You can read articles about this. So the United States, they know about this, about the Iran connection, about the drug cartels, and so on and so forth. But, now in Latin America, because this is including Mexico, we have a problem that more and more the cartels are taking over politics. And you don't need to do the revolution. And actually, this is really interesting. Chavez used to be a proponent of what he called 21st century socialism. That is what he used to talk about. We are doing 21st century socialism. So what did that mean? After the fall of the Berlin Wall, they came all together in Brazil, the Sao Paulo Forum with Lula and so on. And they said, okay, we are going to use democracy. We are going to use democracy in order to create a socialist system. We are not going to fight a revolutionary war necessarily, but we are going to use it in order to come to power. And then once we are there, we establish our system. And we never leave, if we can. If we can avoid to leave, we are going to stay. Okay. So the cartels have been playing an important role in this because at some point, Chavez needed them and he offered refuge to the Colombian cartels from the attacks that the Uribe administration was engaging in, and they would come into Venezuelan territory, and Chavez would protect them, and the Colombian army couldn't go into Venezuelan territory because that would have meant probably war with the Venezuelan army. So they started with that, and the cartels also started channeling money to the regime, and at some point, the regime itself, especially with Diosdado Cabello, who is a very high up in the Maduro administration, became a cartel boss. Now you have regions in Venezuela, but also in Mexico. In Mexico, for instance, 30% of the Mexican territory is controlled by the cartels. 30%. In Venezuela, you have complete regions, complete states that are being run by the cartels. Okay? And now we have a country like Chile that used to be a safe country, like the most advanced country. The cartels are taking over complete regions of the country with their guns and so on. Now, these cartels have, again, connections with Hezbollah. They work with them. And Hezbollah is creating now in Bolivia, which is also a far-left administration, and which is a big producer of coke, Bolivia, they are creating or establishing facilities to produce drones that are for military purposes. But also, we have to remember that Bolivia and Venezuela, I know this for a fact in Venezuela, but I think it's also true for Bolivia, they have uranium which is important for the Iranians, for the nuclear program that Iran wants to develop. So the cartels have become a source of funding. They have become the government in the case of Venezuela, and they don't want to lose their business model. And that's why I think they are not going to accept a transition to democracy in Venezuela, but they are destabilizing the whole of Latin America because they're a business. They're expanding everywhere they can in order to make more profits. And a country like Chile, for instance, which used to be like, free from this problem, now has become the third largest exporter of cocaine to Europe. Because we are integrated with the rest of the world. We have many free trade agreements. And so you have ships here that go everywhere. And we have basically no control on the border with Peru and Bolivia. And so they bring all this cocaine through the northern border, and then they export it via the Chilean ports to the United States, to Europe, and everywhere. And so this is corrupting everything in Latin America. And I've heard, and I think this is in the media also, that the Tren de Aragua, which is one of these cartels and organized crime groups, are also operating in New York and other cities in the United States. Of course, why not? I mean, if it's easy to get into the United States, it's a huge market. Why not? So this is the problem. We are becoming a narco region, or a region controlled by the narcos, and politicians are working for the narcos. And the problem with this is that Iran, Russia, and China, they don't care about this. They just use these cartels or the connections with the cartels for their own purposes. And that's why you see the first countries recognizing Maduro's fraud, saying that he was democratically elected, were China, Russia, and Iran. These three countries. This is not a coincidence.